Well, thank you all very much. I'm used to speaking in front of a lot of people, but I'm actually very nervous to talk today, surprisingly. And it made it a little bit better as people came in. I'm like, oh, I know that person. It makes it a little bit easier. I know that person. And then there's Bruce. I know that person, right? But yes, thank you very much. I only wrote down really one thing that I wanted to make sure that I didn't mess up today. And of course, Jacob read through that and he's like, how do you even read this? And I was like, well, it's more just the idea of what I wrote down that I'd like to make sure that I don't miss. But I want to thank Matt, first of all, for allowing me to speak to everyone here today. And thank you to a few of the individuals who know who they are, who've encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone and to speak in front of some groups. As I started to think about what I wanted to talk about today, the first thing I thought about is I'd really like to talk about myself. And so I went with that one because it's one of my most favorite topics. And that one worked, so we'll just keep it going. Almost 4 years ago, my wife, Megan, encouraged me to get a little bit healthier and to begin working out. And so one day she actually set a pre-workout shake down beside me on the kitchen or on the table that I was sitting beside. She didn't say anything, she just set it there. And that has slowly snowballed into the last 4 years of triathlons, half and full marathons, a kayak race across the Missouri, hundreds of hours of motivational listening and thought-provoking ideas, and essentially just completely changed my life. I think it was a lot of just realizing that it wasn't just the fact that I wanted to make a change in either my weight or my activity or my life, but it was just that I was just unhappy. I didn't have any direction. I was just no motivation, no intention, and it was kind of funny, like I said, how things have snowballed and changed. And sometimes I wonder too, is if Megan, looked back 4 years, she's like, I would have done it a little bit differently, because we've slowly called it my midlife crisis over the last few years. But it's been I think, a really fun ride. And so through that, as I look back, my eyes are open and I start to realize, some of the things that I was doing is, again, I was just living on autopilot, just going from one day to the next, from one thing to the next. And now that I've looked back, I'm like, wow, I feel like this is a story that I can help share with other people, some ideas that I can throw out there to other people that maybe would give you that same nudge that she gave me just a few years ago. I was a classroom teacher, as Jacob said, so I do expect everyone to take notes. There is a test before you can leave. You have to have a note if you need to leave early for the, no, I'm kidding. But I don't want this to just be a talk at you. There are a few things that I really want to get through and to discuss today, but I'm going to ask some questions that please, ask me questions, provide your feedback, or just like back in school, I'm going to call on you. And if you're not paying attention, I'm definitely calling on you, Jeffrey. So anyway, as I started to figure this out, we talked about living on purpose. Oh, by the way, when I was a teacher, I'm not really your A to Z teacher on a linear path. I'm really all over the place. The reason I did a PowerPoint is to keep me on topic. There's just ideas just going, and that was probably the hardest thing. This is actually like the third rendition of what I've come up with, because I had so many things that I wanted to share. And I would put that down, I'm like, yeah, but not quite that, and I would adjust. And then I thought I had it, and then I was like, okay, Megan, I really want you to look through this, and I did. She didn't like it. She was very nice about it, but she didn't like it, and I could tell. So I went back, did it again, and I got it. So today, this afternoon, I'm working, and I'm plugging all of the animations in, right? So it pops up whenever I click it to make it work. At 2:35, I save it, we're good to go, and I want to email it to myself, because as a teacher, I know that you're not going to have Wi-Fi wherever you go, or you're not going to have a laptop that's going to be working. So let's have a plan in place. I click email myself, attach, nothing's there. At 2:35, I went through all of them. It spent about 10 minutes. I did not panic very much, and realized there's a button where you can click old versions, and I finally found it. But for 10 minutes, I thought I was going to have to throw together a new presentation at 2:45, so here we are. So my purpose is to share this with you. So I want to talk about being proactive. So what is purpose? Anybody have an idea? What's your purpose? Not your purpose, but a purpose. According to the dictionary online, it says to be intentional with your decisions, your thoughts, and your actions. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to talk about today. So just having a purpose with what you do. Having an aim or an objective, a reason for doing something. And that's where I talked about a few years ago. I kind of felt like I was missing that. And without that, then what's the point, right? What are you doing day in and day out? There was a quote that stuck with me. So when I started this whole thing, I started to listen, as I talked about there, the podcast, the hundreds and hundreds of hours of just listening to other people talk. And one of the people that really sticks out to me a lot is a person named Les Brown. A huge motivational speaker. I've been listening to him most of the day today to give me that little extra motivation that I need to stand up here and talk and, kind of dig into a few things I want to make sure to key in on. One of the things he talks about a lot that stuck with me is, where are you from, where are you going, and why are you here? And when I used to ask myself those questions, I couldn't answer them as good as I thought I should. I could answer the first one, right? That was pretty easy. But where are you going, and why are you here? And those things just stuck with me over and over and over, and I kept just replaying them. And those are the things I want to kind of dig into today, and hopefully you'll ask yourself those same things, and that maybe you'll be able to answer just a little bit more clearly. So what about autopilot? Anybody? There's no wrong answers except, okay, go ahead.
You just get up every day, same thing, same deal, just keep moving and moving and moving. And every day looks like the same. It's almost like Groundhog Day.
Right? And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, right? Because we all have the family thing, we all have the work thing, right? And it just keeps repeating itself. And it kind of needs to, right? Like we need to. We need to go up and go to the same job every day and serve our clients every day and take care of our family every day. That's part of it, right? But sometimes if you're missing, I'll pop back, the aims and objectives, right? And what you're doing, it just kind of feels like you're just getting by, right? It's exactly what I started to realize. I was like, I'm just doing the thing, right? I'm just doing the stuff every day. I didn't really have that specific end in mind. I was doing my job. I was being a dad. I was being a husband. Was I being a great one? Some days better than others. And so that's where I think about that. Now, the good thing about it is when you're in autopilot, if you think about it, you did have a path and a destination set up at some point, right? But we just get so caught up in the minutia of going to practices and running the kids here, going to this thing, right? Dinner at Sally's on Monday nights, because that's what we do, right? And we just keep doing that same thing over and over, but we just kind of get into this same flow. I was actually just happened to meet a pilot a few weeks ago. And it was really funny. We were kind of talking. I said, hey, we went on vacation this summer. And I said, it literally felt like we were just going along and the pilots were like, oh, shoot, we got to land. And the plane goes, never had we ever went down that quickly. And he said, oh, yeah, happens all the time. And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, oh, well, he said, you put it on autopilot, you get to chit-chatting, you're telling stories with the co-pilot, kind of doing your thing. Everything's just running along fine. And all of a sudden, you do realize, like, oh, we've got to land. And he said, typically, you try to land between like 2,000 and 2,500 feet per minute. And he's like, but if you realize the little late, he's like, I was there once where we were going almost 4,000 feet per minute that we were dropping down to try to make that landing. He's like, sometimes we do it on purpose, traffic, wind, and so forth, because sometimes, he said, the planes, we just plug it in, and it's just running. He's like, the plane's just going to go till it's out of fuel. Right? Unless we do something to make that. And I was like, oh, shoot, I got to add that to my presentation. Right? So how do you know if you're on autopilot?
Good question. Well, are you making an intentional decision about what you're doing that day or that week and how it fits into your plan?
Right? And how would you know? What do you do if you want to share?
Well, you build a plan, and you build the long-range plan, but then you have to put in the daily inputs or the weekly inputs and ensure that they fit into what that original plan was, or do you need to modify it?
Thank you. Because you actually said it better than I would have. And I'm glad that you answered that because, and you may not miss, a couple years ago, I had said once, like, I had this idea, right, of something that I want to do, and I shared it with you whenever we were having coffee. And you actually said, what are you doing today, this week, and this year to make that happen, for me? And I was like, nothing. It was just an idea that I had. It was just a thought, because I wasn't being intentional with those thoughts. So here we are today, actually speaking, right? Because of that exact thing, asking myself, what am I doing today with this? And you've got to ask yourself the question. I think that's where the big part comes along, is asking yourself the question or giving yourself the destination, right? So if you ask yourself, what is it that you want to do, right? Some people in here are just starting their careers. Some people in here are getting towards the end of their careers, right? Each of those is a destination, right? Are you trying to break your company's sales goals? Or are you trying to figure out how you can sell your company and retire in the next 5 years, right? Both of those are the destination, but just waiting for it to happen to you, right, is probably not the best way that you want to do things. And that's what I'm hoping to talk about, here and get you to think about. And as I told Megan when I was actually preparing all this, I said, this is one of the first presentations I've ever done that wasn't fact-based, right? Typically as a teacher, you're just teaching the facts to someone else. Most of this is just inspiration, thought, motivation, stuff inside my head that I think, wow, I think about this and I want to share with other people. So a lot of what we're doing today is just sharing questions and hoping that you'll kind of, take that and maybe run with it a little bit. But it's asking yourself, what is your destination? And then, like Jeff said to me 2 years ago, what are you doing today, this week, and this year to get there? What are you doing to prepare yourself? Are you listening to a lot of things? Are you taking classes? Are you working towards something? Are you setting goals? What is it that you are actively doing to get closer to that goal? Because with autopilot, we're just going right along. Are you on the right path? Sometimes I think we've all been there in some points. We do a lot of movement, right? There's a lot of activity and there's a lot of action. But is it the right action that's actually getting you closer to where you want to be? Right? We've all kind of seen that play out. You can do a lot. We're working really hard. But are we getting to where we actually want to go? Are we moving in that direction? And if you just woke up tomorrow, it's 5 years in the future, would you be closer to your goal than you are now? If you are, you say, oh yeah, then I'm absolutely working my way there. But if not, then maybe you need a little bit of a course correct. Not trying to sound like a downer, but I do have a story to tell with this one. When I was teaching, sometimes in the teaching world, it can get a little bit negative, right? It is a tough job, right? You're dealing with a lot of things, a lot of emotions, especially human emotions, and people are trying to learn things. And so as a teacher, you get a little bit disheartened in it. And I would talk to other teachers and so forth, and I was kind of like, I think I'm kind of done with this. I think I'm ready to do something different. And I probably considered it for about 3 years to change and do something. And I would talk to other teachers, and they said, man, I'm halfway there. I'm halfway to retirement, and I'm hitting my 30, so I'm just going to stick it out. And I was like, is that really what I want to do? Is that what I want to do with my whole life, is just stick it out? And I'd answer that question and say, nope, it's really not. Now, I didn't just go in and turn in my resignation the next day. I started to put a plan together and think, what is it that I really want to do? And so I think that's a good question to always, ask yourself. And it doesn't have to do with your work. It could do with lots of different things. It could just be the hobby thing that you just kind of stopped enjoying, that you maybe don't enjoy as much as you used to. And think, man, is this what I really want to keep doing? Or maybe I just need a direction change. But yeah, like I said, just kind of hearing that, like, oh, just stick it out. Like, oh man, I want to be super motivated when I wake up, right? I want to look forward to that thing. And what is that thing? another kind of side story to that. So once I did decide to change careers, I talked to my superintendent at the time, and let him know that I was doing that, and they were in that boat about halfway through, and they said, man, I just don't know if I could do that. It's such a big change. I've dedicated so much of my life to this, to being in education and going through this, and and not in COVID at that time changed a lot of things. It changed everybody's careers and career paths, and that kind of what happened with them. And so I had left, and we spoke about 6 months later, and they left. And I was like, what made you do it? And they're like, well, I saw that you could do it. And it motivated me to be like, you know what? I think he's got a really good point. Now, the thing is, I haven't checked in like a year or so. So, hopefully they're not kicking themselves for listening to me. But it was one of those deals that we just kind of talked a few times, and same thing. It's like, can you see yourself doing this for 20 years? And they were like, no. So, any questions so far? Comments, concerns? Okay. The concerns when...
Superintendent's on the corner when I got here. He got a sign that says, please bless me, I love you, God.
All right.
I gave him $5, I hope that's all right.
Hey, it's a great idea. That was probably them. Sometimes lessons learned the hard way are the best ones. Okay, so I'm going to need some interaction on this one, so I really hope you guys are thinking. Okay, difference between being reactive and proactive, all right? I took my watch off. My watch is a smartish watch. It tells me when I have a call, it tells me when I have a text message. I took it off because I didn't want to be distracted while I'm up here. My phone is out of my pocket, it's in my bag. Jacob didn't even attest it, dinged. I was like, oh, I forgot to put it on silent. Glad that I did that. I didn't want any distractions up here, right? Because I wanted to make sure that this time was for you. And so being reactive, being proactive. In my role, so I'm a loan officer, right? And this is where it kind of hit me when I talk to these people and we're having conversations and I'm just kind of hearing what they're saying. And, I started noticing these trends a lot of times. The one that always got me is, well, I'll wait and, we'll stop renting when the landlord makes a decision, essentially is what they're saying. And I'm like, man, but, shouldn't you have a little bit more control of what your finances and your life and, your family and all this kind of thing? Well, we'll just wait when that happens. Of course, in the last 4 years, interest rates have gone up. A lot of people are like, nope, we're going to buy when they come down. We're going to buy when we don't have to pay. And so they're just waiting and waiting. And I just have these conversations and I'm like, they're just giving all of their decision making up to someone else. And I'm like, that's stressful. Right? I like to be in charge of what I decide to do. I like to be in charge of my own schedule. I'm pretty bullheaded. Stop shaking your head so much. But when I'd like to decide what I want to do and not wait for other people to make the decision for me. And so those were a lot of the things that came up. So I really would like to hear who can share some things with either your clients or whatever it is in your industry that people just wait and are always reactive.
Prospect. He's like, I love everything you presented, but I just bought this other company and I need to wait for things to calm down before I'll have the time to designate to this. And I'm like, okay. But again, in my mind, he was being reactive because he originally approached me because he wanted better benefits for employees at a cheaper cost, which I showed him how that could be attainable. And he came back with, I'm so busy right now, I can't focus on this, which legitimately could be a true situation.
For sure.
But I saw it as reactive. In my mind, I can get this done, you just got to give me to the people. But,
for sure.
He saw it as he needed to control that situation. So.
And at the same time, he's out of control because he's just waiting on something else. Who knows what the market, right, the health market's going to look like at that time and what rates are doing and so forth if you're just waiting. Okay, is there any way, just as a curiosity, but that you can encourage people? So we're all, in business here. How do you encourage someone like that instead of being reactive? So like a take-home to be more proactive in his insurance shopping.
In my email back to him, I tried to entice him with the $50,000 savings that I was having that this could help pay off the new company you just purchased.
Yeah.
Must not have been enough because it wasn't.
Right.
Dials. Everyone's got their number.
For sure.
I do suspect he will call me 1st of January. And we'll go from there. But I get it. Sometimes when you're trying to focus on something, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that because it's a great, in what you're doing, especially in sales. I'm not sure how many people are in sales in here, but a lot of times that's what I started to learn is how do I take this person that's really reactive and try to encourage them to be proactive with what they're doing. And who else wants to share? Yes.
I try to take the approach about, I believe history tells the future. So I look backwards and say, well, if we were 5 years later, here's what would have happened, and here we are now. And 5 years from now, I'll probably see the same results.
Right.
And then storytelling. There's always somebody that has gone through what they're going through, typically.
I like that. I like the stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Who else? What's that? The tea? Spilled the tea. I heard that once. Anyone else?
Well, the stories
Yes,
are the greatest way to connect because they break them down into, you hope, something that they can more clearly understand than what it, wherever they're at. The reality is that Jeffrey's customer, why did he initially want to make the change? What was the motivation that drove him to reach out to Jeffrey or to him to respond to Jeffrey? And then what changed?
Right.
Why was that motivation no longer the driver to make the change? Or what did Jeffrey miss?
Dang.
Or was it not the change, it was just the risk and what made them scared started to outweigh why they reached out to you in the first place. I mean, I'm hitting that all the time right now in hiring because people are just nervous, right? So they've reached out to me, I haven't even talked to them, and they're like, I've got 2 bays in my auto shop empty, I need mechanics in them when I'm losing X number of dollars a week, or I've got empty trucks out back without service techs to run them, so I'm losing. They call me because they know they're losing out on revenue because they don't have a person to do it. So we find them a great person, they interview, we're ready to make the hire. I don't want to have to bring them on and then let them go, so I'm gonna wait.
Yeah.
So, it's just, and you tell the stories, and you talk to them, remember when we first met?
Yeah.
You were telling me about how much revenue you're losing because you don't have that person. But
Yeah.
when it comes time to
Yep.
do it, it's just, sometimes the scare
It's
is
stop,
a
yeah.
little bit more than
Well, it's like the fear grows. Yes.
Just kind of circling back to the prospect Jeffrey was talking about. Sometimes, and I find with people who are in management positions, if he's just acquired another business, it may be something that's thoughtful and purposeful because he's taking a look at what he has on his plate and saying, I'm making a proactive assessment of what I have enough energy and time and attention to do well. And so these things are all priorities, but sometimes you have to prioritize things when everything's important.
Yes.
So it could just be this point in time when he's got to onboard employees in a lot of different ways, not just, say, medical insurance. There could be other things that he's trying to do, or combining systems and assimilating people into a common culture and so forth. So it might be that he is being intentional and purposeful around it and just saying, this is something that I know I need to do, it's important, but I only have an X amount of management capacity,
Yeah.
and so I have to prioritize things.
That's an amazing point.
Start the conversation.
Yeah.
Then, when it's theoretical, it's one emotion about it. When it becomes real, when you've got a term sheet in front of you or a proposal, and it's time to actually pull the trigger, that's when people find where maybe they overestimated their eagerness or.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say. Every situation is different. $50,000 for most small and middle market businesses is real money.
Yep.
So it's hard to say, but it may not be completely reactive. It might be proactive where this person is saying, I'm being mindful of what my capacity is. I have a lot of changes to manage, and so I have to prioritize.
For sure. Well,
Tackle first, important, but I can only do so much.
Yeah, I kind of like that. So it's a proactive pause. 'Cause like you said, we may look at that again in January, right? I'm going to we all have that urgent versus important, right? Everything is important all the time, but what's most urgent? So those are great points. Amy, would you still like to share?
Yeah, urgent versus important is a great transition into what I was going to share, which is that sometimes I run into people who have waited so long to seek out help that they are beyond what coaching can competently address. And so I have to refer those folks to therapy. And it's always been important to them, but they wait until it is urgent, and at that point it's a mental health issue, not a coaching issue.
For sure. Those are all great. Like, even with all of these, I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it quite like that. I didn't think about it quite like that. So those are great. Thank you for sharing. And I think we did touch on the proactive. I'll just throw those out there. These are the unicorn clients, right? I know in my world, I'm sure you have those as well. The ones where, oh yeah, we're planning, but we're 6 months out. We just want to make sure all our finances are in order. And you're like, are you sure? Do you know anybody else who thinks like you? Because I could really like to talk with them. Right? Or people that are just like, hey, this is what we're doing. We've made the decision. We're doing it. We don't care what the market is. We don't care what people are saying. We don't care about the social media, right, and the news. This is what we want. This is what we're doing, right? And so that's kind of the proactivity that I like to talk about there. So one thing is, and I really struggle with this slide because it was like, how do you break the cycle? And it's like, well, let's break the cycle. Well, how do you make a change? And it's like, so finally I settled on how do you make the switch, right? And so the switch from being in autopilot to not. The biggest thing to me is first you just have to be able to recognize it. And the hard part is having, like I did, a Megan, to tell me. And then to me, listening so well and being so open-minded to listen. That was a joke, by the way. Yeah. And so a lot of it is that, just getting that first thing there. Back when I was teaching, so go back, we're talking 7-8 years ago now, but, we kind of gotten started in the school year. I was not really that involved as I should be. And it was just, I was struggling. It was the first semester. And I was like, is Christmas break here yet? And they're like, no, we just had Labor Day. So I'm like, well, it'll be here. And man, I remember, I kind of gave these kids an assignment. And I'm just sitting at the desk, right? And I'm looking at something. I really liked it whenever we did like career exploration because the kids did it and I did too. And I was trying to see like what jobs are out there that I might want to do that's not this. And 2 of the kids that were in the front, right? They sat up there in the front. I was their 8th grade coach in track and so forth. And all of a sudden, they're supposed to be working on that. And they just said, man, you're really different. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, you are not like you were last year. I said, what? And they said, oh man, you used to tell jokes and you used to laugh. And they're like, you're not the same. And I was like, wow, And I thought about that. And obviously I still do. We're talking 7 or 8 years, I can't exactly, 7 or 8 years ago. And I remember, no. But can we edit that part out, Matt? We'll just, but it was, and I did, that same superintendent that no longer works there either, I went and talked to him and I was like, yeah, the kid said this. And they're like, yeah. Like, yeah, you're just not the same. And it did. And so I had to step back and say, okay, am I being reactive or am I being proactive, right? I'm reactive. I'm not enjoying the situation, but I'm here. I've got a contract. Kids are depending on me. And put a smile on my face. And I did. I turned that year around. But I still remember them just sitting there saying, you're different. You're not the same. And that took a lot for, a couple of freshman kids to throw out there. Yeah.
Is that when they saw you signing up for the job offers?
Right. I know. I didn't put hide on the screen.
4 job offers.
Right. I never applied to any jobs. Wild. But I looked at them because I thought they were interesting. But I did. I like to shop. I was shopping, for jobs. Man, I got a little off topic there, but yeah, it's recognizing that you need to make a change, you need to do something different, right? And so, and the sad part is, and I listen to a lot of motivational speakers who talk about this, and it really is, the sad part is that number one, it takes a life-altering or life-changing event, right? A diagnosis, a phone call, a situation, and it just kind of makes them stop and say, okay, is this is this how I want to, either keep doing, keep living, keep working, whatever it may be. Some for me is an encouragement from a loved one that says, or even my students, right, who just cared about me, even as a teacher. We're just like, hey, we noticed something. And then others, it could just be that great podcast that you've been listening to, or that book that you read that just makes you think, wow. I won't talk long. I originally had planned to just talk about all of the sporting activities that I've done, but Megan said, no, I can't do that. And so, but perfect example, the person I bought the boat off of, right? I was just chatting with them. They had actually paddled the entire length of the Missouri River from Montana down to St. Louis. And I was like, wow, that's so wild. What made you do it? And she's like, oh, well, a friend of mine read a book. I was like, one book? Like the most powerful, it was a book about someone's, their autobiography about going down the river. And it's just such an inspiration to them that they said, hey, we're retiring, let's do that. And so they had, and it was like from one book. Now, I think the idea must have been there. The thought must have been there. But you never know what it might be. One conversation, that could be the thing. But I think it's just, always asking yourself, and this is something I wouldn't have asked myself 5 or 6 years ago, right? I wouldn't have said, am I moving towards, or am I going towards where I want to be, right? Am I going to get to where I want to be, or am I just doing these things? A lady once told me when I heard her I overheard her talking to herself a lot, that she was doing that. And she said, well, I was asking myself for expert advice. And that's who I talk to when I need it. And so I use that one a lot. But I have a lot of conversations with myself, sometimes out loud, mostly in my head. But I think it's really important to just ask yourself, ask those questions. And I'm really happy to see that Amy's nodding, because if she was shaking her head, I know she'd be coming up to me afterwards saying, we need to sit down and we need to talk about this talking to yourself thing that you keep doing. But no, I do. I have a lot of conversations with myself, right? And I typically use someone else's voice when I talk to myself. That way I know I'm talking to myself. But I ask myself a lot of questions, right? Like on wing day, I'm like, you sure? And I just go back and forth. And I'm always, you're doing a great job, Austin. Keep it up. But setting goals. Now, goal setting is coming up, right? It's goal setting season, right? It always comes out now. We got to set the goals in December, except for Jeffrey. He sets his in September, right? So I was afraid I'd get it wrong.
Megan says, I like it.
Thank you. But we're getting into goal setting season, right? Everybody likes to throw those goals out there, get them in January. This is what I'm going to do. Put those in a drawer. Look at them again in November and missed a couple. Goal setting season again. What are we going to do? And you just kind of repeat that cycle over and over. So I would encourage you to set really good goals, set timelines. What are you going to do today, tomorrow, next week, next year to reach those? But just being focused and intentional about wherever it is that you want to go, doing whatever it takes to get there. And then challenging yourself. This was a big one for me. Right, I'm just a very competitive person by nature, and I like to challenge myself to complete things. It could literally be just cleaning the kitchen as fast as possible. I was planting some plants a few weeks ago, and I was texting Megan, and I'm like, I just put that one in 7 minutes. I planted a plant, a 3-gallon pot, I had it in 7 minutes. I think I can do the next one in 6. Why? I don't know, because I just wanted to plant them really fast. But I just challenged myself. When I first started to work out, Megan's all about being able to just work out and just to do it. And that's fine. She's very motivated by that. I got to have something to do and something on the calendar to be able to work towards. So that was what made me want to start doing the triathlons a few years ago. And so I just kind of was like, hey, I used to swim back in college a little bit, so why not do a triathlon and see how that goes? And I did, and I'm like, this is so much fun. And it was just to have something on the calendar. Right now, I don't have anything on the calendar. I haven't had anything on the calendar for a few weeks. And I'm kind of hard to be around sometimes, as Megan can attest, because I don't have that thing right now. There's a few things that I'm looking towards a ways out, but I kind of need that thing. And I know that about myself, and I do feel like I'm kind of missing that right now. Okay, so why should you do all this? Why should you hopefully do some of these things? Truthfully, and this one was a big one for me, is if I figured out how to focus on myself, I could be better for other people. I could be a better husband, I could be a better dad, I could be a better every child, I could be a better salesman, right? I could be a better coworker. But figuring some of those things out. And I don't know, again, going back to the sales thing, but if you think about it, I mean, as I said, before I came in here, all day long, off and on, I've been popping on a few of the podcasts that just really motivate me, really get me thinking, just kind of in the zone, right? And I had to make a phone call this afternoon to let somebody know that I just couldn't help them out on a house right now. And, that just kind of pulled me back down. And I'm like, okay, I've got to make that call, do my job. Okay, now I've got to set that aside, and I've got to get ready for this. Right? I've got to come in here ready to go. And so I did. I kicked back on the podcast. I had some, kind of music in my mind that I was going through because to me, that's how I can come in here and be the best presenter for this group, because you all took time out of your day to listen to me, and that's what I've got to do for you. And I'd hopefully, if you guys think about it, some of your best presentations, right? Your best conversations, if you go back and think, what kind of frame of mind was I in mentally when I did that, right? A lot of times that's people say whenever you're making phone calls, they're like, if you have a lead call and you hang up and that was a great call, don't call it a day after that call. Make the next one, right? Because you're ready. Your mindset's ready, you're excited, you're active, and just keep that rolling forward. And I think that's a lot of, what we have to do, and, doing all these things of, being proactive, trying to focus, being intentional, is if we can put all that together, we can be just better for ourselves and for everyone else. I know this is a short presentation. Again, being a teacher, I can droll on for hours and hours and hours. I hope that there are some questions. I really do. Yes?
I'll ask a question, Austin. So you talked about this pivotal moment where your wife, who clearly loves you very much, enough to set a protein shake down next to you. I'm curious, when you talked about mindset in your last slide, what went through your mind when she sat that shake next to you that caused you to take action?
So, well, hold on. Okay, Jeffrey's got a...
On to her thing, so not take action, but not react. Not take her head off and be like, what the fuck?
Right?
Fat?
Right?
Come on, fat boy, do something.
That's why I'm asking, because I love my wife. If I
Right.
put protein shake down, you might not see me tomorrow.
So I was a thrower when I was in college, right? And like I move a lot of weight and so forth. I could throw a lot. I have a lot of injuries left over from that. And so that's one of the things, like we worked out a ton and so forth, and we were being fit and everything, and it was our whole life. I mean, every day after school, mostly because I did enjoy what I was doing every day. And I especially, way back in the day, like that was my out. I did it to get away from every day, right? And that was an hour and a half where I didn't have to think about anything but me, right? And then we would work out together. And that was even better because I think that was great. Like we would get together after work and we would go do that. And then we just kind of stopped, right? We stopped doing that. They had challenges at school, at work. I never really did them. I just couldn't get motivated to do that. And I had noticed it, and I had been getting encouragement from a coach that we had. Fairway has a sales coaching, new member coaching, and I remember him. He's a big bicycler, right? And he would always talk about it. And I said, yeah, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. Yeah, I just don't really want to do that anymore. And then I would notice that I would play with Cooper, our son, and I just kind of get tired faster than I wanted to, and I was like, she's probably right, and I should do that. And I hated it to begin with. We worked out on our back patio, and it's got like 3 picture windows in the back there, and I was like, nope, I do not like this. But I kept doing it, and I kept doing it, and I was like, okay, this is coming around. And then but it was still, because that was in the fall, that was in October, and I didn't sign up for the triathlon until like January. So I had 3 months of doing something I didn't really enjoy, just to keep doing it. But then I found the podcast, and I was like, well, I can listen to somebody talk about stuff. And I go to the gym now, and I listen to podcasts and people talk. And I talk to some friends, and they're like, what are you listening to? And I was like, oh, I'm listening to, Tony Robbins talking about, and they're like, what? Those people talk, and they're like over there listening to, hard rock and everything. I'm like, no, I just listen to people talk. So no, I didn't react because it was probably there. It was on my mind. And it was like, yeah, you're probably right. It was a long answer to just say you're probably right.
You can give me a short answer.
Sure.
How many siblings did you have?
Myself.
Okay, so you're an only child.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does that answer a lot of questions?
It does.
That's typically what people say when I give them that answer.
Not surprising.
Right? I get that one too. There's two things. There's two schools of thought, I think, with only children, and I've been told both of these, and I choose to believe one. One is, I was born and my parents looked at me and they thought, wow, so perfect, right? Can't top him. We're going to stop there. My cousin says that my mom said, we're going to try this one time, and told my dad, if you mess it up, we're not having any more. So you can choose which one you want to believe.
So, I don't know that I heard the answer of how did you not decide to take her head off? Did you?
Well, I'm a loving husband, and I listen to my wife, and I assume that she's probably right.
So how does a husband do that to the wife? Because the wife always thinks she's right, so I can't really do it that way.
Man, I'm going to choose not to answer that question, but thank you. I feel that, hey, Amy will be available afterwards to help you tactfully have tactful conversations.
I got another question.
Oh, boy.
So in your thing, you said taking the you time.
Yeah.
Right? Like doing you first. And I've always told my clients too, like, you're more effective if you make yourself healthy, right? I mean, there's a reason that airline companies say, put the mask on yourself first.
100%.
You can't help the other people on your thing if you're not doing yourself first. So unless you take care of your own health, you can't take care of your kids as effectively, your wife or your spouse or whatever as effectively. So, but I also believe you need to minimize you time, right? Because when you do a marathon or you do a triathlon, or I ran across a friend of mine who does an Ironman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is all him. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like he's gotten so far doing Ironmans that none of his friends are like, I don't even see him anymore. He's up at 4 o'clock, he goes to bed at 7 o'clock. I mean, he's just no fun anymore. It's like, what's your...
I got two things for that. One is my wife, Megan, is much better at this than me. She wakes up... Well, she just nods right in there. She'll wake up, if she's like, hey, we got a meeting, and I've got this, and I got this at work today, she'll be up at 4:30 doing her workout. She prioritizes herself to make sure that happens so that she can do all the other things throughout the day, right? She's really good at that, right? I struggle to wake up in the morning sometimes because I like staying up super late like a kid. But the other thing is, and because I've had these things, I look at it, your time, your life, your energy, it's like a bank, right? And you make the deposits, because later I'm going to need to make some withdrawals, right? I'm going to need to be away from the house longer than I would like to be this weekend because I need to train for something or I need to go somewhere and do something. Right? When I was doing all of my licensing to be a realtor, I did all of that between 11 and 1 a.m. When I was doing my licensing to be a loan officer, because I was leaving school, so I would teach all day and do that stuff, I would do most of that between 10 p.m. and midnight, 1 a.m. Because I had to prioritize the other things, but that thing that I really wanted, I made time for it. Right? But I had to make sure, and I remember, I'll just share this, but one time we kind of got into it a little bit because our son was little, right? And, Megan would say, man, how come you don't come to bed? Why don't you come to bed? Like, I'm going to bed, I'm putting him to bed, and I'm going to bed, why don't you come to bed? And I'd say, well, I work all day. When I come home from work, we have dinner, we do that together. We play in the living room, we do that together, we do bath time, we do all that stuff, we do that together. And then you guys go to bed and you sleep. So while you're asleep, I'm I'm going to do these things that I need to do, which was be changing careers. But I made sure that I had our time, and then I had my time. And it's tough. I mean, when I was training the closer I got to some of these competitions, the more I was away, the more Saturdays that I may not get back until 10 or 11 o'clock. And I felt bad, but at the same time, I was like, okay, when I'm back, when I get there at 11, I'm there. And I'm with them, and I'm focused on them. And then when I'm on the lake, I'm there. I'm focused about that. And that's how I try to do that.
What
Yeah.
drove you to the mortgage industry? I'm just curious. How do you go from being a teacher into the dark side?
The dark side.
Yeah, I can say that. I went to the commercial side of things. We call that the bright side.
Yeah.
Then I went to the dark side. It's the mortgage because it's regulated so heavily.
I really have a passion for teaching. In a career field, I have a passion for two things. It's real estate and education, right? Not necessarily classroom education. And that's what I started to realize is that, kind of being in that 8 to 3:30 time frame and talking with high school kids all the time, that one wasn't it. But taking information like what I did today and presenting it to a group, this is it. This is what I enjoy. Speaking, I spoke at the Chamber Young Professionals a couple of times now. I've spoken to different networking groups a couple of times. In this world, you take mortgage information and you just present it. Taking hard things or difficult things and watering it down to make it make sense to everybody. And so when I started to realize education was where I want to be, but I want to be educating somehow. I was a realtor part-time while I was teaching. I was home. I was away from family more than I wanted to be. I was missing those dinners and things on the weekend. I didn't enjoy that. But I like real estate and I like teaching. And I knew the loan officer that I work with now. He was my go-to. And so we were talking one day, and I was ready to be done with school, and he knew that. He knew I was planning on being a realtor full-time, but I wasn't 100% committed to doing that. And I was like, the more I played it through my head, the more I talked to myself, I'm like, I think I'd like to help people with the numbers, right? Help them figure out how to buy a house and if they can, and to just go through that side. So that's how it just kind of happened. I never would have dreamed that I would be a mortgage loan officer. That wasn't even like a job I knew was a thing, right? But like I said, and what's what I do now. I try to take all that information that's in that giant book of, can I be approved for a mortgage, and say, okay, this is what you need to do, and try to take that educational teacher role for that. In saying that last thing, and Jacob's getting closer to the deal, so I know he's about to grab the old hook and drag me off and so forth. I would just like to throw it out there, but if any of you at your offices or know of any groups that would like to have a speaker, I am throwing that out there. That's kind of what I did for Matt, and I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity. As I said, I just got a lot of these things I listen to. They're bouncing around my head, and I want to share them. And so if there's any places where you think wow, I think this guy could be a good person to come talk to this group, I'd be really happy to do that. Yes?
Last thing, what podcast? You mentioned Tony Robbins, you mentioned Les Brown. Any particular ones that you prefer over the other, or just kind of bounce around, or? What are your go-tos?
My top two that if you pull up my Spotify right now, is Motivate, where the 8 is an 8. And the reason I like that one, they've gotten shorter. I will say I'm getting a little bit somewhat disappointed in them. But they take little clips from all kinds of different people. And so I like that because it's 5 or 10 minutes. And if I don't wholeheartedly agree with that person, it's only 5 or 10 minutes. I take a little bit from it and then move on. And then I've heard some people where you just get a tidbit and you're like, oh, I need to listen to specific stuff that they talk about. And then the other one is the Resilient Mind podcast. And that one's similar, but they do full length, typically half hour to an hour of their presentations. And those are both on Spotify. And then, like I said, I just kind of go down the old rabbit hole of once I find someone I enjoy listening to, I just keep searching and finding more. Mm-hmm. And Motiversity.
What?
Motiversity. Like Motivate University. That one's another one. That one's a good. They do it like a mashup sometimes, and you'll get it's like a 2-hour thing, and it'll be all kinds of different speakers on that one. But I really like Motiversity. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I made it.